Okay, so here's the 9 steps. Let's get into them. The first one is don't take it personally. When you talk with employees, always assume that those 3 layers are very real to them, and those 3 layers matter to them just as much as the issue itself. And when they spill out on you, it will feel like you are being accused. It will feel like you are being called out. Because again, who's in charge of this band? That's you. And so that's going to come out accusationally. There's really no other way to do it. Number 2, don't attack or get defensive or explain back. There's a couple of versions of this. It's a natural human response. If someone is attacking you, it's natural to say, kind of push back. Well, what about you, right? But that's not the response that will keep them talking. The response that will keep them talking is simply saying, let me briefly apologize for this, but I want to hear everything you've got to say. I'm not going to justify anything that you've seen. I'm not going to justify anything you've heard. I just want you to keep telling me what the challenge is so that we can really get down to the solution, all right? Another thing that shuts them down at this point is the explain back stance. Oh, see, we do that. Well, let me tell you why we do that. Even if it is completely justified, even if if they just knew this, then maybe they would not even have a problem with it. But now's not the time to do that. Now is the time. You can do that later. Now is the time to just hear it. Because if you explain back now, it creates this sense of shutting them down. Like okay, I shut down that one, what else you got? And at that point, they'll stop talking again. It's learning how to listen, and listening means you don't come back with a response as to why the person might be wrong for what they said. You'll get a chance to do that later, but not yet. So don't attack or get defensive or explain back. Number 3, let them express their drama, all right? Another way to say this is let them tell you what they need to tell you however they need it to come out. We worked with Maurice and I worked with a company, and we did this in a kind of large group setting where we kind of poked them to talk to us until eventually somebody said, I don't think my job's at risk if I say this out loud in this setting. And the way they kind of positioned it was like, but you know what? I don't care. I'm going to let it come out anyway. And with there was a lot of people sitting there with the most foul language and things said about the people and things said about the organization. All this stuff just spilled out. Now at the core, there was a jewel, but that's the way it needed to come out in that situation. Your goal is to help them get through those layers, all right? Don't coach them at this point on don't be so dramatic. Just get to the data. Step number 4, repeat back what they said and show that you heard. If they tell it to you in a highly dramatic way, don't repeat back the drama, but repeat back the data. So what I'm hearing you say is that you have been back behind this building for quite some time, and your shovel handle wiggles. You've tried to tell people and no one's listened, and this has really become a real frustration for you. So show them that you heard. Number 5, take notes. There's something really powerful that happens when someone sees you with some kind of notepad and a pen and they're actually writing down what you've said. It communicates even more. I'm really listening. I'm going to do something with this information. I'm not going to have another meeting, because y'all know this happens all the time in workplaces all over America. We have a meeting and then a week later we come back and say, what did we say in that meeting last week? What did we say? Okay, this isn't the one you want to have that with, because if you blow it, they're going to shut down even more. So take notes and make sure you're documenting what they're saying so that you can validate them and you can then do something about it. Number 6 then, validate that their frustration is real. If I was in your shoes, I think I probably would feel just the same way that you do. You know, the frustration you're facing, all of this is such a decompression for them at that point. They don't need to carry the frustration because it can now be released. And so this all gets you back down to that original little light bulb in the center of the target. Validate their frustration as being real. Say things like, I'm understanding that you were at a place of almost unbreakable frustration, and you've almost given up on telling me or telling us what's going on. I understand. Number 7, ask them for their opinion on a possible solution. This is where, don't communicate that you whatever they say is what your follow-up is going to be, because it may or may not be that. It may be that for what you're looking at, there's nothing you can actually do about it. You just have to acknowledge it and encourage them through it until there is something you can do about it. There was a toothpaste company, and they were having a problem because as toothpaste was being manufactured, put in the tubes, the tube put in the little boxes put into a case, and then shipped. Well, sometimes the tubes were not getting to the little box, and the box was going into the case to be shipped, and there was no toothpaste in there, no tube, right? So an executive from a drugstore called the executive of the toothpaste company that he knew and said, we have a problem. The executive, who did what many good executives will do, is identify a solution and make it happen. And so they studied the scenario without really engaging anybody in the front line about it, and decided the best way to handle this problem was to create a new kind of machine and add it to the assembly line that would weigh the boxes as they came through. If a box came through that didn't weigh enough, they'd know the toothpaste wasn't in it. It would set off a little alarm, and the assembly line would stop. Someone would come over, take out the empty box, start the assembly line back up again, and away we go. The issue is they spent $8 million on this machine. Okay? But if it solves this problem, then it must be worth it. Well, about 3 weeks later, they noticed that the alarm quit going off. And so they went down to see what was going on. And as it happens, the frontliner, who had to get up and remove the box, got tired of getting up and removing the box. So he got this idea. I think if I go to Walmart and I buy myself a $20 fan and I set it next to the assembly line, it will scooch the little boxes when there's nothing in them. When they scooch, if they don't blow off by themselves, I'll just knock them off the assembly line, and then I don't have to get up like this. It worked. So the moral of the story is this. $8 million was spent on a solution that was really a $20 fix. One of the things that will show up again and again and again, I've seen this so many times, I know it's true, I know it from firsthand experience, the most inexpensive real solutions almost always come from frontliners. And the reason is that the higher someone goes in a company, the more aware of the dollars they are and the scope of the company, and this unconscious thing happens where if they want to solve a problem, they think of it in the scope of this whole company, and it just starts magnifying it into a larger expense to solve this problem. Frontliners don't think that way. They think about the world that they're in right in front of them, right? So the solution that they come up with is almost always going to be less expensive. So when you're asking them for their opinion on a possible solution, this is another source of gold for your company. Now, meanwhile, on the engagement level, this is also a reason to keep them engaged. We want to work with them in terms of what do you think should be done. And if that's not what can be done, we at least want to acknowledge going back that we have reviewed this and the right people have taken a look at it. What do you think the issue is that will probably allow us to fix this? Number 8, listen to what they tell you with sincerity. All right? If they tell you, well, look, this is easy. We just need to quit digging holes and get a big backhoe to dig these holes behind this building. Well, you may say, look, we don't have $75,000 to buy a backhoe. That's why we have you back here with a shovel. But that, again, that's not the message. Listen with sincerity. What are those of those solutions that they have? There may be none of them that you can use, but the listening itself is part of the solution. And then number 9, validate them by validating their idea. No matter what they tell you, this is a principle that we really live by at Team Real World. No matter what they tell you, good idea. Good idea. This kind of magical thing happens when you train yourself to say this to everybody around you, because when an idea is put out there, it's very connected to the person who said the idea, who's putting it out there. But when you say good idea, you're really speaking to that person, and it allows the idea to separate from the person, and you can now hash up that idea however you need to, and it doesn't become offensive anymore because you've given the affirmation to the person who put the idea out there. So it's critically important that you send this message while you're listening to these ideas so that if you can't do the things they're suggesting, they don't have a basis for you to come back and be frustrated with it, okay? When they tell you what they think should happen, it could be dumb, it could be wild, it could be too expensive, it could be way apart from the way your brand functions. Who knows? Who knows? But make sure you communicate good idea, but that it has to be refined before we could get started on anything. When you listen to their idea and you do something meaningful with it, you come back to them and ask them for more ideas, their engagement after those meetings goes way up. They're more connected to the work itself. And let me just make one other comment. When we work with companies, we can almost measure how frustrated the workforce is by how many parties they're having. Parties are to engagement what dessert is to nutrition, right? If you want to feel like, look, I just want to have people for a little while say, yay, this food tastes great. Give them some dessert. But a steady diet of dessert, you know what happens. I know what happens. Believe me, I know what happens. Steady diet of dessert does not create health, right? The same thing is true if you try to create engagement by doing something other than dealing with the work itself. What's getting in the way in the work itself? What's not working when I try to do this work? What are the things that I don't know how to do and I have to know how to do them? What are the tools that I need and I don't have them, or the ones I have don't work? If they're dealing with those kinds of challenges and you try to create an encouragement by saying, yeah, but you know what, Thursday afternoon after work, we're all going out and it's on the company tab. Woo! Well, everybody will go and everybody will have a good time. But what happens at Friday morning? I still got to come back to my job. I still got to look at this hole that's half dug. I still got to look at my shovel and go, here we go again. This thing that we're talking about, of talking to them about the real problems in their work, the real frustrations they have, when you listen to that and you come back with something meaningful, their engagement skyrockets. And again, remember we talked at the beginning, their discretionary effort skyrockets. So let's go back to this quote we had at the beginning. Good management is the art of making problems so interesting and their solutions so constructive that everyone wants to get to work and deal with them. I think we've filled in some of why that's the case. How does that work? How is it that problems can be interesting and solutions that constructive? It's by helping that frontliner become the hero of the story and working beside them to overcome those problems together.